record album's L7 now.
L7 are real direct rock and roll, and they've demonstrated that across 7 studio albums. This first one shows a punkier route, being not that far from the hardcore scene. The music is burning and raging, and it's a very strong start. And then they reliably do that again a couple of years later. This brings it into focus a lot more, and it's just a little set of really honed, sloppy songs. And then they're ready for prime time. This has their most famous slacker rallying anthem on it, but really all the rest of the tracks are at that level. This is just delicious, sludgy rock. Lava? Then they do it again, but bring the emphasis back to wildness. The compromise in songcraft means this is the first one that's not better than the last one, but it still serves its purpose and ranks pretty well. Then they're starting to lose band members, but the music's not yet starting to lose quality. This is really good. Beauty Process has L7's best tracks on it, just not quite as many as on Bricks. And then the wheels come off. We've settled into a medium pace of songs, which was actually a pretty good idea on the last couple of albums. But they've also dialed the craft back to punk levels, and punk plus medium pace isn't a good result. The sound is shabby in a bad way now, and they've run out of things to say. They're stumbling around for a new sound, and they kind of stumble toward hip-hop and electro-clash, and thereby away from what they're good at, chunky guitars. I've realized while editing that I'm dissing their very low-budget, no-record label release on grounds that include its cheap sound, but I think the songwriting went the same way as the budget, really. Inevitable Breakup, inevitable quasi-solo album that still has the drummer on, who was the only person who hadn't left the band. This kind of does a similar thing to Slap Happy, but here it actually suits the aesthetic. It's more lo-fi rather than low quality. More low volume, low profile. She even almost croons on some of this. This is the right way to approach that kind of less cocky sound, but it's still lacking in the muscular riffs that make L7 so great. Their first release since reforming is this compilation of rarities, and I like rarities, especially when they're compiled. But this bloody CD release is just terribly mastered. I'm not even sure mastering is the word for it, because I think they just took the old tracks and saved them to a CD and accidentally put it on like 48 kilobits per second or something. It's just unacceptable work and a complete oversight or lack of oversight. They're not exactly a hi-fi band, but that's not what's happened here. These are things that once sounded good. Maybe the digital release is better, or, you can just find the tracks online. Anyway, Album 7. They actually released 2 individual tracks you might call singles before they made this album, and they are so good. L7 coming back to do what they do best, it's bitchin'. Which just makes it weirder how little this album shares that vibe. It doesn't have either of those tracks on, and they would have really picked it up. For some reason they're still playing in the groove, the rut of Slap Happy. I would have thought getting the band members back would reinvigorate, and as they tour and play their best songs, they'd get back into the habit of being at their best, and yeah, those 2 tracks implied they would. And yet that just doesn't really hold up on this one, but maybe if they work on some more, they could get back to the sound that really works. L7 play brutal and grimy rock and roll, and they're the best at it.